Roger Casement, who was executed in London 100 years ago today. We are here to honour Roger Casement, and it's only fitting that we are doing it in a square that is honoured with his name, and with a monument to the Cobh patriots and Cobh volunteers of 1916 who are here beside us. I now call on John Hennessy on behalf of the Cobh 1916 Centenary Committee to lay a reed. Thank you. I'd ask you all to remain silent for a minute, please. Thank you. I'm now going to call on Paul O'Sullivan of the Cobh 1916 Centenary Committee to give a speech on the person of Roger Casement. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Ladies and gentlemen, we come here today to honour and remember one of our greatest patriots, a man often misunderstood and indeed much maligned in some quarters when we reflect on the fight for Irish freedom. He was born on 1st of September 1864 and executed by hanging in Pentonville Prison on this day, 3rd of August 1916. Born into an Anglo-Irish family in Sandy Cobh, Dublin, he was christened Roger David Casement. His father was Captain Roger Casement of the King's Own Regiment of the Dragoons. His mother was Anne Jeffson, and in 1892 letter, Casement himself claimed she was of the Jeffson family of Mallow, but this is not fully authenticated. Interestingly, his mother had the young Roger secretly baptised into the Catholic Church in Wales when he was 3 years old. Another interesting fact is his father resigned his commission in the British Army after he refused to help rapacious landlords to evict families from their homes during the land wars. While living in England, his mother died when he was 4 years old, after which the family moved back to Ireland and were cared for by the Youngs, the paternal father's family of Galgorn Castle, Ballymena. 4 years after return of the family to Ireland, Roger was orphaned at 13 when his father died. Having finished his education in Ballymena, Roger moved to Liverpool and eventually ended up working for the British Diplomatic Corps. Known as the father of 20th century human rights investigators, Roger first came to prominence in 1905 when he was honoured for the Casement Report on the Congo. King Leopold II of Belgium, by dint of the Berlin Treaty of Colonial Powers in 1884 and 85, was granted the right to enter the Congo and set up the African International Association. This would eventually be seen as the first private empire and was just a front for the exploitation of the country. The main resources to be exploited were ivory and rubber. Following an outcry after the report, the Belgian government took control of the Congo from Leopold in 1908. It is a sobering thought to remember that 10 million people, or half the population of the Congo, died between 1886 and 1920 as a direct result of the appalling treatment and conditions imposed on the people of that country. In 1911, Roger Casement was knighted following his reports on human rights violations on the indigenous peoples of Putumayo in Peru. Having seen at first hand the excesses and abuses inflicted by empires both abroad and at home, it would be safe to assume this must have shaped Roger's subsequent actions. But it is not as simple as this. As early as 1904, he had joined the Gaelic League. He was involved very early with Bulmer Hobson and the formation of the Volunteers, and travelled Ireland helping to set up local branches. He provided funds and organised school meals for impoverished children of the Gaeltacht areas. He helped his friend, Padraig Pearse, in setting up Scoilena. He was one of the main organisers in helping ex-grandchildren to land the guns from the Asgard in Hove. Of course, he is best remembered for the story of the Odd and his efforts to set up an Irish brigade, the latter of which played a major part in his death. Casement, through John Devoy in the USA, negotiated the purchase of arms in Germany, the plan being to land the arms in Ireland in time for the Rising. The German Navy had captured the British ship, the SS Castro, which had been renamed the Lebo. When the plan was hatched for the shipment of arms, the Lebo was disguised as the Odd. The Odd itself was an actual vessel in service in neutral Norway. It was realised she was very similar to the Lebo or Castro. Thus the new Odd came into being, with the Lebo repainted and flying the Norwegian flag. When Captain Spindler, his crew and the Odd left Germany with the arms, Casement, Captain Robert Monteith and Daniel Bailey followed in U-20, which ironically was involved in the sinking of the Lusitania. She developed engine trouble, returned to port, and they set sail again on the U-19. From here, the story is well known. Casement, Bailey and Monteith land on Bannostrand. The Odd has come under suspicion and he's been escorted to Cobh by the British ship HMS Bluebell. The British crew scuttle the ship rather than hand over the arms. The crew are arrested, taken to Cobh and transferred to POW camps in Britain. Casement and Bailey are arrested. Monteith escapes and some 8 months later embarks again for America. The Odd, with 20,000 rifles and 1 million rounds of ammunition on board, lies at the bottom of the sea just off Daunt Rock outside the harbour here. It is here that the story of Casement gets complicated. Like Childers, he never seems to have been fully accepted. He did not seem fully aware that the IRB, not the Volunteers, were controlling the plans for the Rising. Whether this was because of his personal background, who knows? It is documented that while local volunteer brigade officers wanted to try to free him from the RIC, they were informed by HQ to take no action. Casement and Bailey are transferred to London to be charged with high treason. It is here he is compromised by his plan to form an Irish brigade. Casement wanted to form a brigade through Irish-born British Army POWs in Germany to fight the British at home. Daniel Bailey, as mentioned, was born in Dublin and having joined the British Army was captured in France and held as a POW in Germany under the alias Daniel Beverley. He agreed to join Casement and eventually sailed with him to Bannostrand. Unfortunately, Bailey turns King's evidence to save his own life and earned his freedom and played a major role in the outcome of the trial of Roger Casement. By any standard of international law, Casement's trial for high treason can be deemed illegal. He was charged under a 1351 Act of Edward III for adhering to the King's enemies without the Empire. Our ex-President Sean T. O'Callaghan has commented extensively on this. Casement's main defence was this Act had no legal effect in Ireland. The argument was, under Poyning's law in Ireland, an Irishman could not be indicted for high treason under the 1351 Act only by the laws of the realm of Ireland, and only in Ireland could he be tried for treason. This argument was ignored. Bailey's testimony and scurrilous British propaganda with the use of the infamous Black Diaries sealed his fate. He was found guilty, hung and buried in a quicklime grave in Canterville prison on this day on August the 3rd, 1916. Roger Casement's story is a sad story, one of duplicity both by British and Irish. It is time to properly honour a true patriot who gave his life for Irish freedom. We know some 50 years later, in 1965, Casement was brought home and buried in the Republican plot in Glasnevin in Dublin. As the song goes, his last fond wish, it is fulfilled, to lie in his native land. Or is it? His dearest wish was to be buried in Moylock, County Antrim. But even 50 years later, in 1965, the British still had to put the boot in. They only released his remains on the grounds he would not be buried in the north of Ireland. Interestingly, his return papers for his remains, though he had been stripped of his honours, stated these are the remains of Sir Roger Casement. So here we have a man the British claim is a British citizen, who they charge with high treason and execute, but cannot be buried in the 6 counties which they claim is British. Of course, the Irish government of the day acquiesced, which is unsurprising, as they also reneged on a promise to honour the Crew of the Ord on the 50th anniversary in 1966. Roger Casement's story is indeed a tragic story. But we in Cobh should be honoured. This magnificent square bears its name, and at last the old anchor, resurrected from its watery grave, is on display in the Heritage Centre here in the town. It is a complicated story of a heroic and brave man who exposed injustice wherever he saw it, and whose only crime, just like Pearse, Connolly, Plunkett and the rest, is that he was Irish. I would like to quote from the great man himself. Self-government is our right, a thing born in us at birth, a thing no more to be doled out to us or withheld to us by another people than the right to life itself, to feel the sun or smell the flowers, or to love our kind. Rory Dahi Casement, you will be remembered forever. Today we honour you and we salute you. Agus tá sé fíortha ará, gur má maicimíd, bhór le héad a ríis, gur a míle maithagad.